When I was 19 years old, I had a life-changing rock climbing accident, and I ended up in hospital, and the doctor told me that he was going to have to amputate my finger, and that is why I have a missing finger on my right hand. And I'm going to tell the story of exactly what happened in another video when I will have more confidence in my editing skills to tell the story a bit better. But after the accident, I was left with this feeling of self-consciousness and shame around my finger. I was worried about what people might think of it, whether people would judge me for it, whether it would look like gross, whether it was weird shaped, and I worried about what girls might think as well. I was just getting used to this new experience of having a missing finger and kind of having this, like, I guess, visible show of weakness. And I learned that over the following months, the more I shared these feelings and these anxieties with other people, the more I learned that vulnerability is a strength. And the more I was met with support and empathy and connection, and I actually deepened my relationships with those around me because people understood me better, and I felt like people understood my trauma and my experience. And so over the past 5 years since then, I've tried to be more and more vulnerable because I know that it deepens my relationships and it means I'm more connected to the world around me. And the latest manifestation of this kind of desire to be more vulnerable and to connect with more people is making these YouTube videos. So I share more of myself online, and the more relatable I make the videos, the more I think people will engage with them, because the more I'll talk about things that I actually feel and think. And because I've now built up this confidence of being vulnerable, I think hopefully I can make the videos more engaging and more relatable. And where was I going with this? Sorry, hold on. Yeah, so I was thinking about making these videos for a long time, and I've ended up making them because I got over this fear. And so I want to talk about vulnerability today because I think it is something that the world needs more of. We need to talk about vulnerability more and the fear of shame. And we're going to be accompanied today by Brené Brown, the vulnerability expert, and her book, Daring Greatly: How the Courage to be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent, and Lead. We're going to be talking about 3 things. 2.5. Ha ha ha. So the 3 things are what vulnerability is, why do we avoid it, and how can we be more vulnerable, and finish off with why vulnerability is good for us. So what is vulnerability? Well, I'm going to start with this passage that Brené Brown puts in her book, which is from Theodore Roosevelt in 1910. And it is one of his speeches. And it goes like this, and I'm going to perform it for you. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of the deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly. That is what Brené Brown thinks vulnerability is all about. It is about being in the arena. It is about showing up and letting your full self be seen. And I think to bring this to light more, I'm going to read some examples that Brené Brown collects about what vulnerability is. So here, Brené Brown writes, what really brings the definition of vulnerability up close and personal are the examples people shared when I asked them to finish this sentence stem. Vulnerability is X, okay? So, vulnerability is sharing an unpopular opinion, standing up for myself, asking for help, saying no, starting my own business, helping my 37-year-old wife with stage 4 breast cancer make decisions about her will, initiating sex with my wife, initiating sex with my husband, hearing how much my son wants to make first chair in the orchestra and encouraging him while knowing that it's probably not going to happen, calling a friend whose child just died, signing up my mum for hospice care, the first date after my divorce, saying I love you first and not knowing if I'm going to be loved back, writing something I wrote or a piece of art that I made, getting promoted and not knowing if I'm going to succeed, getting fired, falling in love, trying something new, bringing my new boyfriend home, getting pregnant after 3 miscarriages, waiting for the biopsy to come back, reaching out to my son who is going through a difficult divorce, exercising in public, especially when I don't know what I'm doing and I'm out of shape, admitting I'm afraid, stepping up to the plate again after a series of strikeouts, telling my CEO that we won't make payroll next month, laying off employees, presenting my product to the world and getting no response, standing up for myself and for friends when someone else is critical or gossiping, being accountable, asking for forgiveness, having faith. So those are some examples, and I think we should all be able to relate to at least one of those. And Brené Brown wants to dispel 4 myths around vulnerability, and I think we can relate it to all those examples. The first one is that vulnerability is weakness, and I think we can just accept that vulnerability is not weakness when we hear those examples. It is not weak to show that kind of emotion. The other one is that we don't do vulnerability. There are certain types of people who just say, I don't do vulnerability, but that is a fear of shame. You cannot just opt out of the human experience. Being vulnerable is innately tied to being human. Vulnerability is letting it all hang out is another one. So we often think that being vulnerable is just oversharing, sharing everything that you've got, but actually it's about sharing what you can with those who have earned the right to hear it. So it's not just about saying whatever comes to mind or saying all the things that you have deep down. It's just about sharing what you can with those who have earned the right to hear it. The final one is that we can go it alone. And the myth is that we don't need anyone else and that we can deal with everything ourselves. But actually accepting that we need support and that being vulnerable enough to admit that we need help is a strength, and people who say I can go it alone are kidding themselves, shall we say. So why do we avoid vulnerability? And the main reason here is shame. We avoid vulnerability because we fear not being enough. That is what shame is about. And the other point about shame is that it makes us feel unworthy. It makes us feel unworthy of love and connection. It makes us feel unworthy as a person when we fear doing something because we fear opening ourselves up and that others will be able to critique us and give us negative feedback or criticism, whatever it is. We fear that makes us less worthy as a person. And Brené Brown talks about this really in a great way on page 67. Shame derives its power from being unspeakable. That's why it loves perfectionists. It's so easy to keep us quiet. If we cultivate enough awareness about shame to name it and speak to it, we've basically cut it off at the knees. If we speak shame hates having words wrapped around it. If we speak shame, it begins to wither, just the way exposure to light was deadly for the gremlins. Language and story bring light to shame and destroy it. That's what I'm trying to do here with my video, is talk about shame and vulnerability, because I think the more we talk about these things, the more that we can learn to understand them and learn to work with them to live our best lives. And that's what we love to do on this channel. The final thing, how can we be more vulnerable? 3 things here, another 2.5 things. Being wholehearted, and that is what Brené Brown calls basically that you are always enough. You turn up, if you are wholehearted and you turn up with wholeheartedness, it means that you are enough. And no matter what happens, you always have been enough and always will be enough. Your value as a person cannot change based on your actions. You are just a human and you are enough. That is what being wholehearted is about. Practicing shame resilience. So that means understanding shame, learning to identify when we feel shame, why we feel shame, and then trying to identify patterns in that so that we can break through it, work with it, and try and turn up as our full self and try and ignore shame as much as possible. And then the final point is embracing vulnerability. So sharing with those around us who have earned the right to hear what you have to say or what you want to share, what you're thinking about. The benefits of vulnerability is that you feel worthy. You feel worthy as a person, you feel good about yourself, you understand that the more you share, the more you connect with other people, the better your relationships will be, the more you'll progress in your career, the more you'll be able to do things that you want to do, but you're being held back by currently because of shame and a fear of not being good enough. And that overcoming that is really difficult, but I think it's something that lots of us, all of us, can get better at and improve on. So that is my spiel on vulnerability, and I've tried to do it in one go. Couple things to finish with. Yeah, 100% read this book. If you are one of those people who is nervous about being vulnerable, then this is the book you need. Brené Brown is a professor in America somewhere, and she has written several books, and this is the best one about vulnerability. She also has some amazing podcasts called Dare to Lead and Unlocking Us, so definitely check those out. Just surround yourself with as much of this conversation around shame and vulnerability as possible, and you'll understand that over time, you'll understand that you'll be able to share more over time, is what I was meant to say. Yeah, I think that was all I was going to say. Oh, her TED Talk as well. It's called The Power of Vulnerability. Definitely check that out. It's really, really good, and she absolutely explains vulnerability much better than I do. And yeah, she's on a TED Talk, so super cool. Thank you very much for watching. I feel like I was going to say something else. Yeah, if you made it this far in the video, please drop an emoji into the comments of some kind so I know how many people made it this far. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps show this video to more people, which is helpful for me. And thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one. I did this last time. I have to, because I'm not editing it. I need to stop the video. Thank you. Bye-bye. Actually, I'll finish it off with... I can't down that. That's too much water. Thank you.